Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Review the News, brought to you by Tribeworthy, of course. I'm joined today with Jared Fesler, who's been a guest before, and we have Dave Stann joining us out of Oakland. Today's article that we're looking at is called Judge, Bars Are Allowed to Throw Out Trump Supporters. So before we even get to the article, we see on Tribeworthy that it's got a 60% trust rating with only 5 reviews so far, but we've got a review for a political agenda and sensational. And both of those contested reviews are actually from our guests today, so we'll hear what they think. And here I am over on the article itself. It's a New York Post article written by Julia Marsh. And again, the title is Judge Says that Bars Are Allowed to Throw Out Trump Supporters. So Dave Stann, on Tribeworthy's rating page, I see that you reviewed this article as a political agenda. And I reviewed it as trust, for the record. So let's hear what you have to say about it.
Well, clearly, Chase, you're wrong. That's what must be going on. No, I think this article presents, I think, something that's emblematic from a lot of news articles, is that reading it, the facts presented really do back up that sensational headline, and it really walks through a convincing story backed by verifiable facts that support that narrative. And at first, I totally agreed with your trustworthy rating until I said, well, I have a half hour of time to spend verifying these claims and digging around, which is a shame that it takes that long to do that. But what I ended up doing was discovering that there's a few other facts that I think shine a little bit different light on this article. I think step one of this is, and let me go ahead and I'll even share my screen for a second to walk through 2 or 3 of the other articles that I found. Here is my review on Tribeworthy, talking about it being a political agenda. The first point is actually it's right in the article itself, which is that the entire article takes facts that are just from the plaintiff's point of view, just from the guy who filed suit, his attorney, and his version of events. But clicking on some of the links in the article, I actually came to this article. This is the man booted for a Trump hat paid like a pleased customer. This is another article by the same outlet, New York Post, a few months earlier.
Same author, too.
What's that?
Same author, too, Julia Marsh.
Yeah, same author, Julia Marsh, and actually provides a quote from the bar owner calling out the fact that the guy who filed this court says that John Nidich is the owner of the Happiest Hour, says that he provided a receipt showing that the plaintiff actually paid $186 and added a 20% tip, a $36 tip over here. So that right away kind of, I think, provides some contrarian info that if he was thrown out and it was so terrible, why would he have, first of all, had a chance to run up such a huge bill, and then second of all, left such a generous tip?
It's
relevant info to include in the original article on this.
Yeah, this is some much needed context. I feel like if you combine the 2 different stories, 2 different articles, you get a completely different opinion on the entire story itself.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, that was just the tip of the iceberg. That actually was what led me to realize, wait a minute, why isn't there more, firsthand accounts from the actual bar owner in this article? And it made me realize that all the facts in this original article that was posted to Tribeworthy are just one-sided point of view. So I did a little bit additional digging, and I went over here to The Independent, and I found out that actually the entire court case, and this is the second point of the review that I posted there on Tribeworthy, is that he had actually filed suit saying that him getting thrown out over wearing this hat was a violation of his spiritual and religious beliefs. So the entire case wasn't, I'm trying to wear a hat and you're throwing me out for that. It was specifically that he was religiously discriminated against for wearing them.
And the reason for that, he claims with his lawyer, is that he and his friends were visiting the 9/11 World Trade Center memorial that day, and that is why he was wearing the hat, and that the hat isn't a representation of Trump or necessarily political views, but it's more of a spiritual ideology. This is kind of how he was spinning it in the court case. But in the end, the judge ruled that the bar owner is well within his or her right to discriminate based on political ideology.
See, well, I would even push back a little bit on that and say that he didn't necessarily rule that the bar owner could discriminate on political ideology, but rather that this particular case was not applicable to the religious discrimination under which it was filed. The fact that it was political speech is irrelevant. It could have been any hat. It could have been any speech.
That's a very good clarification.
And it wasn't the hat itself wasn't relational to the religion that he said it was for. So this is actually the exact point where I came up with my own review, which was the sensational piece. And it was mainly because the headline, if you were to just, skim through the news and read that headline, this sounds like some big, really huge issue. And I can see how it can become that way. But I think based on the facts, after further digging like you, Dave, you really find that the plaintiff actually filed it for the religious beliefs. And then that is what the judge is ruling on. Yeah. Wasn't ruling on throwing out Trump supporters at all. It was just, is this spiritual piece of memorabilia or whatever. So
a more accurate headline may have been supporting a political candidate is not considered a religiously protected speech. And
right.
it didn't really, I feel like the author of the article and the original gist of this was trying to get to a political bias or score some political points when that wasn't actually the underlying court case.
Now, Chase, why did you leave your trust review? That's kind of what I'm getting at, because I feel like there's a lot of evidence here pointing the other direction now.
So I agree with everything you guys are saying. And it's definitely, I'm glad I was able to see your reviews on the rating page before going into this article and after, now that we've been digesting it. Because there definitely were some pieces of information there that I didn't notice. Like on my first read through, I didn't realize that the bar owner's side of the story wasn't being represented. And obviously, if you'll allow me to screen share here, obviously we see that the headline alone is a little bit clickbaity. It seems like we're starting off on what might be a political agenda, trying to maybe sound like this Trump supporter was victimized in some way. And to try to generate outrage, which is why, Jared, you reviewed it as sensational. But what I think is interesting is that when the reporter is doing the back and forth here about how the judge ruled on the case, I don't think that there's any spin here. I think that the author, Julia, is doing a really good job of showing kind of just how badly the Trump supporters' argument broke down in court. And so although the article headline begins that way and that maybe the New York Post has a little bit of a right-wing slant generally, I do think that everything in this article is true. I think that she didn't present the Trump supporter in any kind of a extra positive light. In fact, I think he plays out poorly on this read. But I will give you guys that this is not necessarily a balanced article, but I do think that she is trying to create an introductory article to the story. And so that might be why there's less of that extra context. With that, did I sway your guys' votes at all?
yeah, kind of. This was a tough article to review. I think there was a lot of different factors that were going into it. And Chase, I originally was laying more on the trust side, but then as I looked at it longer, looked at the headline and then what basically the conclusion of the article was, the two didn't go together. And so that's where I got split off, went to the other side.
It was really helpful to have Dave with his review there with all those extra links, because I would not have found those other stories. And it's especially interesting that same author, Julia, did another article on the same exact subject with different context without combining the two articles.
It's very polarizing if you think about it. Mm-hmm. Basically, she's playing the different sides of the argument. Exactly. And maybe that's why the headlines are more built for clicks, because that's who she's trying to go after.
That was my first impression, is one of these articles to get more clicks for the left and one of these is more for the right?
Is it like one of these is built to be shared
speaking
of left and right, I try to, I'm not sure the exact political leanings of maybe the New York Post, but, we can all certainly agree that typically CNN will lean a little left and Fox News will lean a little right. And one of the things that I was able to kind of discover in my research on this was an article on this from both CNN and one from Fox. The one from CNN contains this quote from the bar owner saying, "What's gotten lost in the story is the guest wasn't kicked out because he was wearing a Trump hat. He was asked to leave after being verbally abusive to our staff. We don't tolerate." And then, of course, you could say, well, maybe that's the liberal spin. So I actually went to Fox News, who has an article about the owner of this bar getting death threats now over this. And even Fox, quite fairly, I think, includes this quote from the bar owner saying he gave Paytech the heave-ho because he was being drunk and belligerent and catcalling a female bartender. So certainly, it seems like even if Fox is going to kind of include that, then maybe the New York Post should have included what I think would be considered very fair and balanced information here for the New York Post to include.
Right. So one of the review options on Tribeworthy is stacking the deck. So it seems like the author came very close to committing that fallacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
All right. So I think that's good. I'll wrap it up by taking us to the Tribeworthy rating page just once more here so we can see everybody's reviews and how they played out. All right, so just to sum it up, we have a 60% rating with the first 5 reviews for this article written by Julia Marsh in the New York Post, with political agenda and sensational as the top 2 reviews. And those proved very helpful for me as a reader going into the article. So thank you to our guests today, Jared Fesler and Dave Stann, for joining us and reviewing the news. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. See you.